Hey, this is Jen Maleka, your functional diagnostic health practitioner and expert, coming to you guys this week from sunny San Diego, where I live, and I'm talking to you about the scary side of sunscreen. And that's because last week summer officially kicked off on Tuesday with the summer solstice for those of us that are in the northern hemisphere, and coming up this next week for those of us in the US is 4th of July, which means that we're going to be spending a lot of time out in the sun in the next couple of days, weeks, and months. And this time is my favorite time of year. I love the abundance of sun that is out here in the summertime, the long days, the warm nights. It brings me so much joy and happiness. And all of that kind of came crashing down for me 8 years ago when I was diagnosed with skin cancer, and my summer bliss was totally devastated. Now, when I was diagnosed with skin cancer over 8 years ago, it was devastating to think that I would have to slather myself in sunscreen all the time or constantly be covered up and not be able to enjoy the outdoors as I always had done. You know, being out in nature, soaking up the sun's rays was part of my livelihood. Some of my fondest memories revolved around spending long hot days in a pool all the time, adventuring outdoors in the sun, and staying up till all hours of the evening playing until the sun went down. Now, my diagnosis was a bit shocking at first because I wasn't your typical candidate for melanoma. I was diagnosed in my early to mid 20s. I had no family history of any related cancers to skin cancer, and I wore sunscreen most of the time. Mind you, it was SPF 15, and I had only had maybe 1 or 2 bad burns in my life. So while I spent most of the time in the sun, you know, I just didn't expect for this to really happen. Now, the thought of having to wear and smell like sunscreen was absolutely repulsive, but I had to do what was right for my health and my body, right? So back then, I immediately went to my local drugstore and I stocked up on all of the typical name brand, you know, sunscreens that provided an SPF value of at least 30. But what I didn't realize was that some of these sunscreens were probably part of the problem, and that my skin cancer wasn't a symptom of too much sun. It was actually a sign of some deeper dysfunction that was going on in my body. Now, when I started my training in functional diagnostic nutrition back in 2012, one of the first tests that I ran on myself was a urine test, an at-home urine test that looks at something called oxidative stress. And oxidative stress basically measures the amount of cellular or DNA damage that you have going on in the body. And at the time that I was diagnosed with skin cancer and when I did this test, my oxidative stress levels were higher than optimal. So meaning that I had more cellular damage and I had a higher risk for skin cancer or any kind of cancer for that matter. So wearing sunscreen was only part of the solution to preventing skin cancer for me down the road. Now, cancer cells are a result of something called aerobic glycolysis and oxidative stress. Now, free radicals or damaged cells are associated with oxidative stress, and these happen because of an increase in stress on the body. And one of the most common contributing factors to this are environmental toxins. So I immediately kind of realized that some of these name brand sunscreens that I had been lathering up with were probably part of the problem and had contributed to my risk for skin cancer in the first place. So every year now I check out with the Environmental Working Group's Guide to Sunscreen. And the Environmental Working Group is a nonprofit organization with the focus around creating a safe and healthy environment free or with minimal toxins for all of us. And every year they publish an annual guide to the best and worst sunscreens. So you can see what is the safest thing on the market, and everything is basically ranked based upon toxicity levels. Now, in this year's guide, some of the brands that topped the worst list included ones like Banana Boat, Coppertone, Neutrogena, Equate, and the brand from CVS, their own brand. So, you know, aside from basically, you know, not maybe protecting myself well with the right coverage, also these toxins from the sunscreens themselves were probably a contributing factor to what increased stress on my body and raised the oxidative stress levels overall with those damaged cells that were floating around in DNA. So Now I stock up on non-toxic sunscreens from my local health food store. Some of my favorite brands are Alba and Kiss My Face. I've also swapped out all of our cleaning products at home and my personal care products for non-toxic ones. And I pay special attention to making sure that I provide, as much coverage as possible for myself if I'm going to be spending extended periods of time in the sun. Aside from the toxic ingredients, some of the other misleading facts about sunscreen is actually the SPF value as well. So when I was diagnosed with skin cancer, I started doing more research about this and talking to my dermatologist, and that SPF 15 that is, let's be honest, the most commonly used because everybody wants to get a little bit of sun but not too much, is actually one of the worst routes that you can go, because in order to get SPF 15 coverage, you have to use at least an ounce, which is the size of a shot glass, in one area to get that same SPF 15 coverage. So you want to get something that's SPF 30. I use a minimum of SPF 30 all the time on my face, and then especially on my body too if I'm going to be out in the sun. Now, research is also showing that SPF values of over 50 actually don't provide you any more benefit. And in some ways they're misleading for people because they think if they're putting on a higher SPF value, then they can go longer periods of time in the sun without reapplying, and that's just not the case. So what it really all boils down to, what I want you guys to take away from this week are like, what are a few simple things that you can do in regards to sunscreen and protecting yourself from the sun to prevent skin cancer, or any kind of cancer for that matter. So what you want to do is when you're going to buy sunscreen, you want to make sure that you get something between an SPF 30 and SPF 50. Remember, anything less than 30, like a 15, you have to use a lot of it to get even that amount of coverage, and anything over 50 is not really proven to give you any extra coverage necessarily. Also, check out a non-toxic sunscreen brand. You can get these at your local health food stores like Whole Foods, Sprouts, Trader Joe's, or anything equivalent to that as well. You want to make sure that you reapply frequently, every couple hours, especially if you're swimming or sweating. And then also, if you're going to be spending extended periods of time out in the sun, like hiking or something like that, like I just did last week in Sedona, you want to make sure that you maybe wear a hat or some UV protective clothing in case that sunscreen doesn't provide you the coverage that you need. Now, these are really simple things that you guys can start doing now to help prevent skin cancer down the road, and also to protect your skin from any aging. Now, to check out all of the details and a full list of all the sunscreens that are good and bad, I invite you to also check out the Environmental Working Group's 2017 Guide to Sunscreen. You can click on the links below or go back to the email where you found this video and check that out and get educated for yourself, because this has been a game changer for me. Here I am, over 6 years, skin cancer free, and I 100% relate it back to making sure that I reduce my oxidative stress by reducing toxins, and also by making sure that I protect my skin in the proper way. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I want to wish you a safe and skin cancer free summer. I will be skipping next week for the holidays, so happy 4th of July for those of you in the US. Hope you guys found this helpful, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.